going now. And we'll give everybody another minute or two to join us, and we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dana Carey, and if you haven't been to one of my sessions yet, I'm part of the admin team for the Facebook group, and I do not claim to be an expert by any. I started implementing building thinking classrooms last school year at the start of the school year, and did the best I could. Answer questions as best I can. But not an expert. So just here holding a session and having discussion. So anyway, we are recording, and I'll get those loaded later today. I'm at school and I'm freezing, and so I'm gonna go home and load everything. But anyway, so today's chapter is chapter 3, which is where students work in a thinking classroom. So we're talking about vertical non-permanent surfaces today, or wherever the conversation goes. It's up to us. So I'm open to whatever. But this is the middle school session. If you're not a middle school teacher, that's okay. Welcome. But I think that this chapter is pretty much the same for all grades, but you know, there still are some differences. So does anyone have any questions or anything to get us started? All right. So I'll just start. There was a couple of things in the chapter that stood out to me. One of them was on pages 58 and 59 in the book. You don't have to go there. But where Peter makes the comment that the random grouping and the vertical surfaces are the techniques that had the most effect. And so if you follow the Facebook group, the feed, you'll see often where people will say, I just implemented the first few things, and which would be, you know, the random groups, the vertical surfaces, because those are the things that have the most effect. So whereas we want to do rich tasks or maybe the thin slicing or whatever, it's getting them into the random groups and standing at those surfaces doing their work that have the most effect. So if that's all you're doing, that's okay. You know, if that's all you can manage at, you know, to start or for the whole school year, that's okay. Just do what you can do. You know, I struggle a lot with trying to do things just the way you're supposed to do them. And I have to keep telling myself, it's okay. It's okay to modify. It's all right. So one of the other things that stood out to me as I read this chapter, probably for the third or fourth time, was on page 65 in the frequently asked questions about the marker movement. And what he says is, when you're having trouble getting students to write, is whoever has the marker cannot write what they're thinking. And that became really important to me with my high ability students, because I teach 8th grade math. So I have regular math, 8 classes, and I have 2 algebra classes that are 8th graders. And the algebra classes just really want to get up there and just plow through it and get it all written down. And do I have it right? And, and so with that group, especially, I had to implement you cannot write your own thinking. And it really worked well for them, and it caused them to have more conversation. And then I had kids in regular math who just didn't know what to do. And so when I go to that group, I'm like, well, do you know what to do? Yeah. Okay. Then you get the marker and you write what they know what to do. And so the person who knows what to do isn't doing the writing, and they're explaining it to the other person, and they're having to write it. And so I feel like, there's some learning going on there in that process. And so I tried to do a lot of the, you're going to be the scribe today. And I kind of put it, for 8th graders, a point of view is, you get to boss someone around and tell them what to write. And they liked that they got to be the boss and tell someone what to do. So that was one of the other things that stood out to me as I read the chapter again. I'm rereading a lot of chapters this summer. So anyway, any comments or questions so far?
I totally agree with you about the scribe thing. That's so awesome, because I implemented just a little bit last year, just the vertical whiteboards and the random grouping, and I just would yell, pass the marker, pass the marker. That was like every minute or so. I said, if you just solved a line. I also teach 8th grade math, and I have 2 advanced classes as well, and I would just pass the marker. If you just solved one line of that equation, pass the marker. And so now I have that scribe in my tool case, so I can use that for when the kids are struggling. I love that idea. One other thing in this chapter that stuck out was slow garbage. I've never heard that term, and I loved it. It was on page 66. To show them that all ideas are valuable. Even the wrong stuff can stay on the board for a little bit. And I like that they suggest to draw a line around what they want to erase and draw a circle around it, and then draw a single line through it and call it slow garbage. We might not need that, but just in case, let's not erase it yet. And let's get, enhancing the idea of, you can't erase someone else's work, unless they're okay with it. And it's crazy that I didn't realize we have to teach all of these concepts of working well together and being respectful when they're talking to each other and all that. And it's so cool how the book lays out these ideas for us. I really liked this chapter. I love the whole book, but I like this chapter.
Yeah. Even reading it again, I'm like, the first time I read it, I was blown away. And I think I had to read it again just to really absorb it, because the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, this guy had to be sitting in my classroom when he wrote this book, because this is me. And it still just amazes me. It's like, yeah, how do people read this book and not implement this stuff? I don't know. It's beyond me. But yeah, I like that part too, about the erasing. And my counterpart struggles with the erasing part, because they just want to erase everything. And it's like, no, don't erase everything. You had some good stuff there. Oh, we just lost it. and I mean, to the point where she wants to like take the erasers away. And I'm like, but you can't do that either. So I don't know what
I'll just use their sleeve. You know, eighth
yeah,
graders,
I
they use
know.
their
They'll use
sleeve
their
anyway.
fingers, you know, yeah, yeah. And I tell them, you know, your board wouldn't look like that if you quit using your fingers. But, you know, yeah, so I definitely agree on the erasing. I think they do, as you're right, you have to teach them about the whole erasing thing and not to erase too soon and, you know, look at it before you erase it. And, cause yeah. And I got to a point where when I got to the board and I'd start talking, I said, no, wait, don't erase. Don't erase. We're going to look at it. Go back and find your mistake. You do have a mistake. Go back and look for it. Don't just erase. And because everything's good. It's good stuff. You missed a sign, you know, or you didn't do your integers correctly, you know, or you multiplied and you should have divided. I don't know, but you know how kids are. And so, yeah, the erasing is a big thing with teaching them. So anyone else?
I also really liked the part about having a sage, because I was thinking about my kids that feel intimidated by math. And if they were up there with a kid that they knew was a little bit stronger math student, they wouldn't be comfortable putting their thoughts on the board. And so that idea of, well, I'm going to write what you tell me, takes the pressure off of them and helps them learn it at the same time. So that was, I really, really like that. I haven't started using it yet. I just read the book this summer, so I'm pretty excited to start.
It's very exciting. Yep. Do you guys have other people in your building who do the building thinking classroom?
No, but I'm going to pass this along.
Yeah, I was really fortunate that I got a new counterpart last year, and she was someone I worked with before, but she taught science and she retired and they talked her into coming back to teach math. And I said, oh, you got to read this book. And what helped me was that her having the science background, she was used to doing the group work, because that's kind of from what I've seen anyway, a science, you do the labs and all that. And I was never good at group work, never. So I was really intimidated going into this whole thing of, gosh, I've done direct instruction forever, and I do it well. We all do. We can nail that direct instruction, and wanting me to do groups, no, no. But I've also said for years, there's got to be something different. There has to be something different, because this isn't working. And so that's the only reason I was willing to just throw it all out and start over. But
I think it's that scariness of the loss of control. Direct instruction, I can plan everything and I know what will happen. And with this, it's like, oh no, I don't know. And but that's exciting. And it is a game changer. I just, like I said, just implemented a little bit, and it was such a game changer. I cannot wait for next year.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks I was, because I was very nervous going in, but once we got going, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. Because when you're standing back and just watching it happen, it's like magical the first couple of weeks, because like I can see everything happening at once. And before, I had to run around like a chicken with my head cut off. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, you need help with this one. And you're only helping the kids who want help, because that's all you have time for. And so this way you can stand back and just see it all unfold. It's like, oh, wow, they really don't get it. Or I know they're going really fast through this. They're going to have a lot of time left over, or, it's just amazing it just changes everything completely. It's exciting. So I'm excited to do it another year and tweak it and do better. So anyone else, feel free to join right in.
I have a question. So I'm just now reading it, and I'm kind of doing the chapters as we go. So I just finished third. I imagine this may come later in the book, but are they up at the board the entire class period? Do they take notes? I mean, what does it kind of look like time-wise?
So I think it's different for every teacher and grade levels and subject. For me, I did not do the random groups as they came into the classroom. And a lot of teachers do it that way. And that's how Peter says to do it. And that's perfectly okay. But for me, I needed to have assigned seats, because if I'm going to be out, my sub is not going to know what to do. And for me, it was critical for a sub to be able to not have to worry about that. And last year, I knew I was going to be out a lot. I had some personal things going on. So my kids come into their assigned seat. And what I did was I had picture cards of my students, because I got the idea. Well, I also did a lot of Pam Harris stuff last summer. And she said, if you really want to build the relationships, know their names before they come into your classroom. So I made picture cards of all my kids. And after a couple of weeks in of trying to use Flippity to make my groups, I was like, okay, this isn't working for me. Works for a lot of people. I didn't care for it. So I thought, oh, I have their pictures on cards. So that's what I used to make my group. So they come in, get their seats. I pull out my cards, pull out the kids who are absent, shuffle them, talking to them about what we're going to do today, whatever instructions they need. And then I start pulling 3 cards at a time. Okay, you and you're at board 1, you're at board 2. And that's how I did mine. And so I tried to get them to the board as quickly as I could at the beginning of class. Sometimes we were at the board the entire period. Sometimes we were not. If we had notes to do that day, then I tried to stop with enough time that they could get their notes going or get them done. Or maybe that day we had to check your understanding, and I would try to make sure I left time to work on the check your understanding to at least get a start on it. And some days we didn't have those things, so we were just at the board the whole time. So it just kind of depends on your class, where you are with your content. We had days where we just didn't go to the board, and that's okay too, because you're going to find that you're probably going to want to change it up every now and then. Now I know people who just put them to the board all the time, and that worked for them. You'll figure out once you get going how your routine's going to be, with how often you need to be at the board and how long. And there were days where because I can't do the assessment piece later in the book because we don't do standards-based grading. So I had to figure out a way to still give grades. And so what we do sometimes is we'll go to the board for about 15 or 20 minutes and do some review, and then we'll sit down and do a mini quiz. And so that would take maybe about 10 minutes or so. And then they may have something else they can work on after the mini quiz, like Delta Math or something like that. So you just kind of get into, just like you do with everything else we teach and everything else we do, you get into your routine of what works for you. But no, I wouldn't expect that you would be at the boards the whole period any day necessarily, because there's always other things to do. We always have other stuff we have to do. So, and I wouldn't want that pressure that I had to feel like I had to be at the board all the time like that. Does that help? Okay.
I have a question about, so I have a kid who was in 7th grade last year. He'll be in my 8th grade class this year. And he was one of those kids that when I redid seating charts, I never moved his seat. Like, he needs that structure. I think he's going to lose his mind when I do this. And I don't know how to accommodate that exactly. Do you have any good suggestions for that?
So are you talking about when you put them in the random groups? Are you planning,
Yes.
Are you planning to have them at their seats in the random groups? Do you understand? So like, are they going to get there when they come in the classroom? They'll get a card or something that'll tell them where they're supposed to sit, and that will be their random group for the day. Is that the process you're planning to do?
I had kind of thought about that, but then I also like that idea that you gave about having them go to their assigned seat and then give their groups. That might be better for him, I guess, to start that way.
It might be. I had a student this last year who has severe anxiety. And one of the things that helped me is that her stepsister was in the same class. But this student, the seat in the classroom was really important. And if I changed the seat, or if I was going to be changing seats, I had to let her know ahead of time. And then with the board work, sometimes she would go to the board and sometimes she would not. And so if I put her with her stepsister, she would go to the board. But even then, sometimes she wouldn't. Her anxiety level would just be too much and she couldn't handle it. So like we do as teachers, you just have to really be aware of where that student's mindset is when they come into the classroom. You could even, if you wanted to do the random groups as they come in, that particular student is just always in this particular seating group. And then they'll get 2 different people who rotate in and out if that student's comfortable with that. My student would have freaked out if I would have done that. And then when it came to the board work, I just didn't make it an issue. When I called the names, if she went to the board, she went to the board. If she did not, then that group just had 2 kids. So because otherwise she's one that would just walk out. And, I've got 20 other kids in the class I can't go chase after. So that's how I did mine. If she went to the board, that was fine. If she did not go to the board, I didn't even say anything, because even saying things sometimes to the kids, set them off. And so I would just let it go. And I was fortunate that my the counselors and everyone down the front office was aware of this child and the issues, and we're okay. If they came in and saw that student sitting and not at the board with everyone else, they knew. And so it wasn't something that, came back on me. So I think you could make it work as they come in. If you give that student, this will be your seat. You won't have to switch seats. This will just be where you are, and you could, figure out how to make it work like that.
Can I piggyback on that with challenging students? The kids will surprise you, because I had a really challenging 3rd period this year, and I thought, oh God, the groups are going to be, I can't have these 3 boys together. And there were some days where no, maybe there wasn't magic happening in this group, because these particular kids probably weren't working the best together, but they definitely surprised me. They worked harder than I thought they would. And there's that idea in chapter 2 where when you remove the social barrier with this random groups, then it's like, well, whoever you were in the hall doesn't really matter, because I'm not choosing you as there's not this hierarchy of friends, and I'm going to choose you, and I'm going to be the leader of this group because I'm the leader in the hallway. And this random idea kind of gets the kids in this idea of, okay, everyone kind of has a shot of being the leader. And these kids that have maybe struggled generally in their seat, because maybe they can't sit in a seat, and we're trying to make them sit in a seat for an hour. Now they're at the whiteboards and they're able to get their wiggles out, and they're like actually working. There were so many times this year where I'm like, whoa, what? that kid's working. And I would like nudge my aide and go, look at this. It can be magical. So sometimes those problem kids will just surprise you.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that this will help him. He's also just one of those kids that you've all had him, doesn't work well with others. He's very, very intelligent. He's in the gifted program. And even when he does try, his tone of voice isn't friendly. So I'm actually kind of hoping that if I talk to him ahead of time and give him some advance warning, is this what we're going to be doing? This is what I need you to sound like, or whatever, that this might help him learn how to work with a small group a little bit better. Because in the last year when I had him, I just didn't make him work with groups. I let him do his work by himself. And that's not always great though. And as he goes into high school next year, the year after, he's gonna need some of these skills. So I'm hoping that he's the only one I'm concerned about. All those other tough kids I think are going to be fine, but I'm a little concerned about him and just how he's going to handle it.
Yeah, I think definitely the conversation ahead of time, especially since, you know, you have a history with this student and you developed a pattern last year of, you know, this is the expected behavior, and now that's going to change. And so, yeah, I think definitely a conversation would be a great way to start. Absolutely.
Well, I have a question on this random grouping. Hi. I actually, due to COVID protocols, now in my school, students don't go to the teacher's class. Students are in one room, one classroom, and teachers go on rotation. So I have to go in grade 6, teach math, then we make move out and the science teacher would come in. So in that scenario, how would I quickly and effectively utilize time to do grouping, set up questions on the board and ask them coming, because they are not going to come to my class. I'm going to go to their class.
And so when you go to that class, will you like plug into technology and like have an overhead?
Yes,
And so
we have projector, whiteboard, everything.
is that space the same space you would need for a group to be at the board?
Yeah, in fact, we have desk where we can write to. I have ordered and my school has given me the sanction to call on a few 4 or 5 big whiteboards with the stand. But for me to get them in the class and do the setting, and it will be a tough time for me initially, once I understand how and where to place them once my class is over, because someone else may not use those whiteboards. We
Right.
have glass also, windows, which can be used, but still it will be a time struggle for me with the 90 period. How would I randomly group them and get the task rolling?
I would say if you can use your projector, your overhead, to front some things, you know, like get your tasks ready that way and project them on the overhead. Peter does talk about giving the tasks verbally. That didn't work quite as well for me. But I mean, technically that would be the easiest way. You put them at the boards, that you could do your groups electronically and put it on the overhead. So that it's already loaded and you just hit the button and it comes up and you're off and running. And then if you gave the tasks verbally, that just didn't work for me very well, the verbal part. I don't know why. I don't know if I didn't try it enough. I don't know if it's because I have 8th graders, and you know, if you have 8th graders, you know, they're 8th graders. But it worked better for me to put the tasks at their boards. But if you're coming into a new group, a new room each period, each time, and you're either going to need to give them verbally, I would think, or be able to project them on the overhead. That to me would be the most time saving way to do that. And I did some of the projecting with my algebra classes, and it went fine, except that, you know, they get on different problems. You know, if you're like doing thin slicing and, you know, one group gets ahead of the other, and Peter's like, well, they can get it off the other board, which is absolutely true. And I would say, hey, well, you need to get your problem off of board 5, or your problem's on board 3. But then I was also flipping back and forth on projector screens. Okay, yeah, no, this is the one you're on. And so that was a little, you know, I really got to watch which problem I have up, because I didn't want them to skip problems. Because if you're doing thin slicing, it's in an order for a reason. And so, but I think you could do it. I think you could do it.
Okay,
I
I'll
have a
surely try.
question. I have a
Yes.
question for you. Do you have three, or for Ms. Shaw here, do you have four whiteboards like of your own that you need to move now to like 3 different classes in a day? Is that what you're saying?
No, actually, we have been sanctioned the whiteboards, and I may drag it. The 2 classes are together, but one is on the ground floor and one is on the second floor. I definitely won't put them up and down. But we have the furniture in such a way that I can use my whiteboard markers, and we can erase it. So the desk, the cupboards, all are those furnitures where we can write, even the glass.
And the kids will want to do this. So include them and say, look, guys, I want to do this building thinking classroom. That's what I did. We used the COVID, we had like these COVID protector movable boards that we turned into whiteboards, and they were kind of shady. They would, you know, wiggle but the next year my principal actually saw me using it. So she approved whiteboards, but the kids were so willing to, you know, finagle and sit here and do this. And maybe they'll go get your whiteboards from another class and move them for you, you know, use the kids, and they'll have great ideas.
Yeah, that is a good resource you have suggested. They would be more than excited and faster than me.
And they always like to help. They're always happy to run an errand and go get this or go get that, deliver this, deliver that. And yeah, so they'll be glad to help you with that.
Yes, thank you.
You know, for grouping, I wonder if they could have numbers. Each class, the students are numbered, and then you could just put up on your projector what the groups are for the day. And you could use that same one for each class, because, you know, number 1 in one class will be number 1 in a different person in another class. Maybe that would save some time.
Yeah.
I know Dana didn't really like Flippity, but I love Flippity. I mean, whatever works for you, but you got to check it out. You put all of your students in the bookmark. You can bookmark it. It's free. So I listed all my 36 kids, bookmarked it as period 1. Then I just go to that bookmark for that day, and I edit the bookmark real quick, take out my absent kids, and then hit select, and it'll do, you could do groups of 2, groups of 3. They have a random pinwheel thing, like a spin wheel. When I have I got an extra sucker one time, I said, all right, I'm just gonna, you know, hit the pinwheel. They love to see their names on the pinwheel. And then when I'm done for that day, I just X out the tab. And the next day, when I go back to the bookmark, all my 36 kids are in there. So then I just quickly edit, and I labeled my groups last year by 8th grade math terms. So I had scatter plot groups, and I ended up not liking that. It was cool because they, you know, they were able to say, oh, I'm in Pythagorean theorem group. I liked that idea. But then when I went to Flippity, it would say group 1, group 2, group 3. So next year I'm going to label my groups group 1, group 2, group 3. And that way on Flippity, they see it on the screen. Oh, I'm in group 1, and it's labeled on that whiteboard. I'm going to go right there. So that worked for me, but you just got to try it, because so many people have different strategy. But I'm with Dana on walking in. I need them to have a seating chart. I need some sort of structure while I take roll, while I answer the phone or whatever. So I still did small, quick warm-ups at their seats. And then I went to Flippity, and then they were up at the whiteboards pretty quickly, but not every day. Just like Dana said, you've got to switch it up with middle school. They don't want the same thing every day.
This has been a good session. We're almost out of time. Woo. Yep.
I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
any of you teach something besides math in the same classroom? So I have math and I have science, and I don't know how to, you know, I don't necessarily want all the whiteboards up for science. I'm just wondering how people have done that.
You know, you might try some of this with science. I've seen where that there are other subjects that have tried some of the building thinking classroom, and I think there's some of that science stuff you might be able to do with the building thinking classroom. Maybe not all of it, but.
So what I end up doing is I have a homeroom class, and I teach science and social studies to them, and then I do math to several classes. But I'm thinking if I do it for science and social studies, then some of the uniqueness of having math up at the board is kind of gone.
Gotcha.
I'm afraid that might lose some of the buy-in.
Well, or they may surprise you and say, hey, we get to go to the board for math. Why can't we for this class?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if they're your kids, that's my reminder. You have to do what works for your kids. So. Anyone else? That was my reminder that it's been 35 minutes and I'm on the 40-minute plan on Zoom, the free one. But anyway, this was a good session. So if we don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and close out. I appreciate you all coming. And there'll be more studies happening in the group. So be on the lookout for, they're trying to put together different concept studies like thin slicing and consolidation, things like that. So that'll be coming. All right. Well, we'll see you all later. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.